Hi, my name is Laura Walker. I run a company called AG Capital based in Los Angeles. What I used to do is not unlike what Julien used to do. I worked in a film finance group within an agency called Creative Artists Agency. I worked there for 7 years. I was an agent there, and my client base was high net worth individuals who were writing checks to make films. And my job was to help mitigate their risk. So for a $10 million project, they weren't writing a $10 million check, it was more like 2. And I was finding other ways to offset risk before the movie was even made. And then when the films were made, I would then sell them to US buyers, to studios, to help the investors recoup their investment hopefully before the movie is even released. So they're not biting their nails on opening weekend. This year, I switched over from being a seller to being a buyer, to being a financier, and I partnered with one of my former clients, and we invest in features and also television, and yeah, I think that's it.
Good.
Yeah.
Obviously, most of the people on the panel generally are investing in larger films, but the principles I think apply in the dynamic between the producer and investor. And I maybe we could just start by talking about investor profile and what obviously Julien represents many investors and the other folks represent one investor or several investors. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how an investor sees the film landscape.
Sure. So first and foremost, I mean, in the region, people are not very familiar with investing in movies. So it has to be something that's appealing, but that's also easy to understand. So, and it starts with just presenting it as such. So presenting a film as an investment, meaning having a proper, projected revenues and a P&L and a detailed budget, and not just sending, a script and a potential cast, but going the extra mile and actually figuring out how can we make money on this, and putting yourself in the shoes of an investor, because that's what an investor wants to see. They want to see, if I put $1 here, how much money can I make? They're willing to accept the risk that they'll lose all of their money. That's fine, as long as they see, the potential upside, and then they can take a gamble. But the reality is today, very few movies are packaged in a way that gives them a proper chance at succeeding. For example, in developed markets, even the capital structure of how a budget is financed has several alternatives. There's debt, there's tax credit, there's equity, there's pre-sales, etc. So we might not have as many options here, but if we could at least try to use some of the levers that are available and structure the investment in a smart way and present it in a smart way, I think it goes a long way with the investor, because part of the investment decision is also seeing how much work was put in just making a document that's appealing, and not just, and the research behind it, meaning where can it be distributed, how much box office can we generate, etc. And we, believe it or not, we see that, not on many movies from regional filmmakers. So
it's about doing research in terms of how the film can potentially
it's
recoup.
about proper structuring, the proper budget, not being, doing something that costs too much for what it can generate, and just presenting things right the way an investment is presented.
Anybody else want to add, Ellen?
I think that, Julien, if people came to us with a package like that, we would be so happy. I mean, it's very rarely the case, but that's all right, because we understand that a lot of our work is to develop those financial scenarios. But I think that what would be really helpful when people are looking to make a movie and want to approach a source of financing, and also in our case, because we're the major distributor in Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand, we have dominant market share in all those territories. It's a little easier for us to put together financial scenarios just based on what previous movies have done of that genre, et cetera. But what would be really helpful for people who are just coming up with a script would be to at least explain to us what is the target market for this? What countries do you think it will be released in? And also, for example, what's the demographic for this type of film? If you could cite recent scenarios of similar films, that would always be really, really helpful to us. It's not that we can't do the homework, but that it would make our work a lot easier.
Good. Lauren, did you have anything to add?
So I come from a totally different background of having worked in a family office doing commercial real estate development and technology investing, and so it was very touch and feel, tangible businesses where it didn't feel as much like you are biting your nails for an opening weekend to see if your movie's going to make any money. But I like to look at investing in movies in the same way that you would look at investing in traditional other businesses, where you mitigate your risk by making sure that the movie that you have is similar to building a building. You're not going to make your movie unless you've made sure that you're offsetting that risk by tax incentives, by sponsorship dollars even, or EIS money if you're doing it in Europe. And that way you actually feel like when you're putting your money into a movie, you're not only investing in something that hopefully you're really passionate about with a team that you're passionate about, but also that's something you feel, very confident that you'll be seeing that money back, whether it's your own money or certainly for your other investors if they bring any others in.
Laura?
So your question was about landscape, but how many filmmakers have Arabic-speaking, Arab language films, and what about English language films? Okay, so it's about 50-50. I mean, I can certainly speak more to the English language market. And as for everybody else, I think that the festival has done a great job of putting together a book. And I can't remember what the book's called, but it's orange. It's a smaller book that came in your bags. Like the reports that they have on every single territory is really thorough and fantastic. I'm going to take it home and study it when I get home, when I'm not taking meetings. Oh, that one. Yeah. What's it called?
Focus
2015.
Worldwide Film Market Trends.
Yeah. So that I think that was a helpful study guide for me this morning when I was looking at it. But I think as far as the landscape goes, it's been I got into film finance really at the worst time in the United States in 2007. So I've seen the industry grow up over the last 7 or 8 years, and I think this is a really exciting time to be an independent filmmaker, because if you look at the studios, you look at, say, Warner Brothers or Universal, and they're being run by people who didn't actually start out in filmmaking at all. They started in marketing, or they started in the water, or in the parks, and they're business people who are filling out their slates until 2020. They're betting on the fact that we will be the same people in 2020 as we are today, and I don't think that I don't have the same taste today as I did 5 years ago. But I think that in independent film, you get a chance as a filmmaker to really have a conversation with the public because you're smaller and you're more nimble. As a financier being on the other side now, I find that it takes me 6 to 7 months to negotiate a really big deal with known directors and movie stars, and I can choose a movie, negotiate it, shoot it, and wrap it in that same time. I think that to be in the smaller space is actually, you can use it to your advantage, but you really have to give yourself a head start by giving us the tools to be able to analyze that project. And we want that opportunity because we want to make smart investments. And I think that you're in a great area if you live here, because I think that this industry is just starting to grow up and it's finding its way. And I can see that it's going to be a market-driven rather than a subsidy-driven area, and I think that the investors are opportunistic and they're very savvy, and so I think we're going to talk more and drill down into the tools that you need to have in order to do that and present the work, but that's how I think the landscape is right now.
Just to add one last thing, I think also that the process of going through the preparation of all of that makes the movie better. So when you're thinking from day one, all right, how do I get an investor excited? And then you work backwards and you work out what the maximum budget should be, you work out what the actors should look like, you work out what the potential sales are going to, etc. And then it pushes you to just think better about everything, including scripts, believe it or not. So There's a lot of things that affect that, and that process in itself helps the movie anyway.
Yeah.
There's a truism that I learned and have used since because it's true, is that a film never gets made for the budget that you make. A film gets made for what the market will demand for the project. And if you really want to make that film, you will make it for the money that is being given to you, and the only way to maximize those dollars is to be prepared and put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very true, and I think it's important that filmmakers realize that, you know, you're not making just one film. As I said, you're making many films. You have more than one idea, and that if you do the research, as Julien says, and you find out that actually my movie should cost $500,000, well, then that's what you should probably make it for, because then you'll have an opportunity to make another one that might be bigger than that. I wanted to talk just a little bit, just before we get into the sort of the mechanics of it, a little bit about, I don't know, you know, there's a sort of adage that investors always want something new, but not that new. So there's a little bit of reading the sort of zeitgeist at the moment in terms of, I mean, Lauren's very clear, she likes true stories, so that's a helpful guideline. And I do think it's sort of like in with sales agents and casting, you know, you as a producer always tend to want somebody who you think is going to be big, and they want somebody who is big, but it's impossible to get at the moment. So I just wondered how much in sort of story, from a story point of view, you take into account sort of what's going on at the moment in terms of in culture, in history, in politics.
We actually look more not at the stories, you know, how relevant it is. We actually, again, look at who's the audience for this. So it could be a very old-fashioned kind of story. It could be a rom-com, or it could be a suspense thriller, but there needs to be something in it that is going to connect with audiences today in the target marketplace. And that's something where I think as filmmakers, you can educate us. We may not know, for example, that there's a really popular online novel series that everyone in Dubai is reading or something like that. But if you say, well, you know, we have this is a common social phenomenon, this is what young people are caring about these days, I mean, all of that will be very helpful for us to make the decision. A lot of times what we get is naked scripts. And it's very, very difficult for us to go through those. We get a number of, for example, we're based in Beijing. Our main group is in Beijing, although we have a big Hollywood studio backing us up. But when we're looking at Asian movies, we get submissions of scripts from all over the world, which are the same stories, which is foreign guy comes to China, meets beautiful Chinese woman. There's a, you know, parental problem, right? And then, you know, it's a fish out of water story, and there's all these embarrassing cultural mishaps that occur and misunderstandings, and then everything works out in the end. That's what we call the fish out of water story, and we have a list of the type of movie projects we will always reject. So it's not only that, you know, it's okay, why is that not a good story for the target market, which we're operating in is China? Because there's already been at least a dozen of such movies made, and the audience has rejected every single one of them. So it's not only that, you know, it's not workable, but it's also that it shows to us that the people developing the film haven't made any effort whatsoever to understand the audience. So that's basically, but on the other hand, if you come with something that's unique and that's hot right now for the target audience and you explain that to us, we're definitely going to have a look at it.
That's a great point. Julien, do you want to add anything?
I wouldn't say it's event driven or it's, you know, anything like that, but it's more about just having a well-rounded package for us. I mean, good actors, good script, and
I think maybe this might be a good place to sort of segue, because as Ellen had mentioned, you know, not wanting to just basically get a script, and that you need to develop your project to the point where a financier can become involved. I mean, some financiers do get involved in development. I don't know, does anybody here get involved in development? Yeah. Okay, you do.
I do packaged development, so
okay,
the elements are already in place, and there's a director and actors and all that.
So I think that maybe it would be good to hear from the panel at what point you prefer to get involved, and sort of why. And then secondarily, we'll just talk a little bit more about the details of how you like to invest. Lauren,
No, go ahead.
Honestly, I prefer to get involved either at the very, very beginning or at the very, very end, and everything in between is where it gets a little messy for me. I mean, as early as I've been involved in a television project recently, bought a book that's not even finished, doesn't come out until next year, and we've already hired the writer to start writing the series to turn it into a television show. So that's very early stage for us. And the late stage things that I've done is, movies that are even halfway through being shot and something's gone wrong and they need someone to come in for a quick save. So we've done things like that as well. I think that anywhere in the middle ground, it just feels a little unclean sometimes, and there's not as much control, which is an area that I think is really important to be able to have a lot more control both over the creative side and also specifically over where your money's going.
We're exactly the same way. We have two different types of projects. One, the first type is where we either develop a concept from the outset, we option some intellectual property, we take remake rights, we remake one of our own Hollywood movies. We start with a writer who has either writes to a book or has already written a script. In fact, one of our collaborators, Larry Young, is here, who is a writer-director himself, who wrote a script based on an award-winning Chinese novel. And as soon as we read the script, we made a deal with Larry and his production company to make this movie. That's the cleanest way to do it. You're involved in shaping the concept from the very beginning, and you know that there's no intellectual property rights issues. The other type, which is less favored by us because we like to be involved with development, is if a really experienced producer with a very clear creative and commercial concept comes to us with a full-fledged package with budget, a marketing strategy, the script is already done, we already know who the director and the actors are that are attached, that's also much easier for us to make a decision about.
To us, we're the last piece of the puzzle, including part of the funding already in place. So.
I could probably do a whole panel on packaging because I have so many grievances about it. Packaging can take a very long time. Either it happens lightning fast or it takes forever. And so I need at least one compelling element to package around. And what I mean by that is either a director that definitely attracts cast or an actor who kind of signals to other talent that this is going to be something of pedigree, so that I can kind of shuck and jive through the packaging process in an easier way. So the other thing is, like, what you could do if you're talking to an investor, sometimes this works, is to say, why don't we do an agreement where you'll fully finance my movie if we get XYZ actors attached or this director attached, so that you have a roadmap and you can then go to those representatives and say, my movie is fully financed, and we're backing an offer to George Clooney. That way you can say to the representatives that your movie is fully financed, but if you don't get George Clooney, then your financier feels okay about walking away because that was a predetermined point in your agreement.
And I think maybe we're sort of getting halfway through. I wanted to just sort of, maybe we'll start to take some questions from the audience, but I wanted to just hear maybe from each of you, sort of, if you were to, in a few sentences, give advice to first or second-time filmmakers who have previously, got money from grants and subsidy systems regionally, and now want to try and access the sort of the market with a project that they think they've got some. It's obviously a good idea, and they think there's some market potential for it. And I say that because this region, obviously there is a lot of money here, and it's especially in the Emirates, there's money tied up in real estate, and I know for sure that people would be interested and attracted to an alternative investment. But I say it like that, it's an alternative investment. It's not. Sometimes you'll be lucky and find somebody who just loves you or loves your project. and we'll just write a check. But most of the time, they want to see some return, or at least see that there's a path to return. So I just wondered if that's a useful thing for you to hear, and whether each panelist would just like to comment on, I don't know, your top 3 things that you look for, and in order for you to really go, okay, let's see if we can at least engage in a conversation. Laura.
If you're a first-time filmmaker, I think that if you're trying to work within the U.S. system or the English language system, I'm not sure how it is in other territories, but finding a seasoned producer that really signals to the industry that this is something of pedigree can be very valuable, can give your project legs, and I think it's just human nature. People in any industry call back who they want to call back. And if Scott Rudin is calling on behalf of your project, you're obviously going to get more calls back than if you're calling. So I think that's a really important first step. I haven't thought through 2 and 3, but that was the first one that I thought of.
No, I think that's very true. I mean, and film festivals are the perfect place to find producers. And if there's films here you like, you can look at the credits and see who the producer is, and you can just contact them. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. Because producers also are opportunistic human beings and are looking for talented filmmakers or talented producers to shepherd.
And on the festival note, if you are going to festivals with your project, have your next project ready to pitch. You will miss so many opportunities if you go to festivals and you don't have your next thing to pitch, because people want to jump on it. They want the next best thing. You want to take advantage of that momentum, and you want to have some sort of strategy, or at least just something to pitch, so that people can help form a strategy with you if they're a fan of your work.
Julien?
I would echo that and say surround yourself with the right people. So a lot of people in the region want to do everything. They want to be the director, they want to be the producer, they want to be one of the actors, they want to be the writer, and you can't be that good at everything. So decide what you're good at, and if you're a writer, find a good producer. If you're a director, you have to just figure out who the right team for you is. And if you have a movie and no producer wants to touch it, ask yourself why and try to make it better. But trying to surround yourself with the right people will help also, again, the process of getting your movie to a better place. So
that's great.
This is all really good advice, so it's very hard to beat this. But I think...
you can say it in Chinese. Maybe.
Yeah, right. Raise the bar a little bit. I think there's really 2 things. It's not like an easy 3, 4, 5, whatever.
I just gave a number.
The first thing is... a passion to have a career, which is, I think, you mentioned at the very beginning, Paul. I think that's so right. You're starting out as a filmmaker, but it's not just a one shot, and it's not hit and run. You're thinking about this as where you're at in your career, and where do you want to be, and who do you want to surround yourself with. And the second thing that's very, very important is respect. We may not be the smartest people in the world, but we're not dumb money. We really, it's not, you can invest, there's a lot of things you can invest in. Investing in films is risky. So at least, give us a break and treat us as people who are worthy of respect. And if we say something that sounds maybe negative or discouraging, or we're trying to help with something and it's not the direction you want to go, I don't know, don't just dismiss it out of hand. But the other part is respect for the audience. There's so many people who are really feels like they're making the movie for themselves. And if that's the way it's going to be, then that's not really going to work with an audience. And sometimes what the audience wants to see in a movie may not be exactly what you've thought of, but you still have to take that into account, because otherwise, as a young filmmaker or first-time or second-time filmmaker, if you're trying to build up a record of success, you have to try to help your financiers find a way to get your movie to the right audience so that they can recoup their investment and feel good about working with you again in the future.
Lauren?
I think 1, 2, and 3 for me is just be prepared and do your homework. And as you're a director, expect that someone's going to ask to see your prior work, or if you haven't done anything, expect to know that they're going to ask you, what do you visualize and what's your vision for this movie? If you're a producer, expect that you're going to be asked questions about the budget and tax incentives and all different kinds of questions that you should be prepared to answer. So that to me is just, that's all three of them.
I figured out my third, which is not so much advice, but maybe a to-do, and it may be helpful for people in this room to just, if you've written a screenplay or you have one, and you're not sure how it measures up, and you want to get some feedback, and also this is also a cheat for getting financial modeling. There is a website called Slated that has been gaining traction, especially over like the last 6 months, with some services that they've been providing. There's a script analysis service, and there's also a financial score service that you can purchase through Slated. It's free to become a member, but you have to pay for the service, and I can't remember what the pricing is right now. But the financial models are really sophisticated in a way that is impressing people in the industry. And the reason why the modeling is impressive is you basically get scores on your script and your package and then your eventual financial score. And the financial score, it has a bunch of different, like, bell curve fancy graphs that, you pay for, and like you can hand those over to investors. So like this company is doing it for you, but the reason why people in the industry are impressed by it is that it's more accurate than studio tracking. Studio tracking, I never really knew what studio tracking was. I just knew that studio movies were tracked a couple of days before they come out. And studio tracking is 92% accurate. But you're getting as an investor, you're getting the information on those movies 2 days before they come out. Slated is 94% accurate, and you're getting that information 2 years before a movie comes out, and technically like before it's even financed. So financiers are looking at those models and they're making decisions based on those financial analyses. The other reason why it's interesting is studios have proprietary information, and when they track movies, they're not sharing information with each other. So Sony is not sharing information with Warner Brothers is not sharing with Universal, and it's all siloed. But Slated has gone around all of the studios, and they've taken hundreds of data points on, I think, 10,000 movies that have been released over the last 2 or 3 decades, and it takes a holistic approach to how projects have performed in the marketplace. So you're really getting that's why you're getting a more accurate financial analysis on your project. So if you have some dollars to throw at a service, like it's an impressive package to show a financier. I know if I had gotten that as an agent at CAA, I think I would have appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember the enormous amount of data there is out there, and especially, and also for this region. And the other thing I just thought of is if you're really new to this, that you can just get an investment prospectuses for another business. They all kind of look the same. And that investors who, somebody was mentioning, they invest in cars or real estate, they want to look at something that looks like something they've seen before, and not something that looks like you invented this new system. So I think that's another sort of important thing to remember. I just wanted to see, I mean, we're sort of almost, it's 50 minutes left. I wanted to sort of open up to the floor, and if there's any questions down the front. Yeah. I think you're supposed to wait for a mic. I know you're supposed to wait for a mic.
Yes, hi. My name's Sammy. I have a question about packaging. I'm sure that you guys have heard it many, many times before. When you have a script and you want to raise money for it, the financier, the investor would tell you, you have to have a name attached. Then you go to the agent. And then you send him the script, and then the agent says, are you financed? So if you don't have the money, you can't get the talent. If you don't have the talent, you can't get the money. So it's a catch-22 kind of situation. So what do you guys suggest we should do?
So that's what I was touching on a little bit before, and I probably wasn't clear. I'm jet lagged. I'm sorry. What you could do with that investor is say, would you finance this movie if George Clooney attached himself to the project, or Brad Pitt? And let's say their answer is, yes, I want to be in business with Brad Pitt or George Clooney. So you do a financing agreement with them saying you will fully finance this movie if one of those actors attaches for the lead. So you can then take that financing agreement and that financier, and they can then make an offer to Brad Pitt or George Clooney's agents. Now, if both of them pass, then you don't have Brad Pitt, George Clooney, or your financing. But if your script is really great enough, then maybe one of them will attach, and then you get one of them and you get your financing. That's how you kind of solve the catch-22 situation.
I've actually tried that. And the answer from the agent is proof of funds. Show me proof of funds. Or they want to do pay or play. You know, they say either you show me proof of funds or I'm not talking to you, or you show me, or you do pay or play, and they're open, and they always ask what make an offer. Then when you make an offer, and I did it through my casting director, you know, you make an offer, and either they don't answer you, you know, they just don't call back, you know, or they would say, well, they would ask you things like, when are you shooting? They ask you some detailed questions that you don't have answers to yet, you know? So that, I don't know, it's sort of a brush off in a very nice way. So how do you beat that?
I mean, I have answers to different things, but I don't want to monopolize this. You guys, if you... I'm learning a lot. If you're speaking to an agency that has a finance group, sometimes that finance group can be helpful because they understand a little more about how the money flows than, say, a talent agent, because a talent agent has a different skill set. So they're saying proof of funds, but really what you could probably do is say, put me in touch with someone in your film finance group at your agency, and I can have them speak to an account manager at my financier's bank. That way, your financier is not backing an offer, they're not putting money into escrow, but like I think they just want to know that the money is there. And if your financier doesn't feel comfortable with that, I don't know, is your financing real? It's good to know, you know. It's better to know early on, like, you know, fail fast. If you figure out that maybe your financier is being a little too sensitive about the process, then you may want to find somebody else because that financing might not be real.
There's another question there.
Thank you. Thank you for the great discussion. My name is Gerard Alfil from Xinhua News Agency. My question goes to Ms. Ellen Kissinger. Eliasoph, sorry. Ellen. Two questions to Ellen and to Julien. Ellen, the film Dwelling in the Fujian Mountains, a couple of years ago with famous Hong Kong actor Andy Lau. How was that financed? Do you recall that? Were you involved?
Sorry, which movie was that?
Dwelling in the Fujian Mountains. And
Oh,
it was
right,
partly
right,
shot.
right. Yeah.
It was partly shot in Dubai also, and there was a press conference in Atlantis Hotel. How was that financed? And question to Julien. Coming back to Paul's point on alternative investments and alternative financing, there is no stock market. Films cannot be stock listed, so I can't see the performance over the past years or in the past in general. How do you make sure that this market is transparent? Are there any auditing firms involved which can say, surely, yeah, this was the cost of the movie and this was the revenue and then the profit and so on? How does it work exactly? Thank you.
Well, to your question, there's certain types of movies that get put together in China that are complete outliers because there is a lot of dumb money in China. I mean, a lot. So that was put together by, I don't know, a bunch of new companies who made money in coal mining or something like that, and basically put a lot of money into it. And it was, it was one of the worst reviewed movies in China in recent years. But it did have Andy Lau, and Andy Lau, even now, if that movie was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think that if right now in China, and this actually goes to something that you were talking about, there are no slam dunks with, if you get such and such cast, then your movie will get financed because there is no box office guarantee. And actually, it's the same thing in Hollywood. If you look at Sandra Bullock's recent movie, which completely tanked, even Sandra Bullock, even Brad Pitt, they're in movies that don't do well. So there's a bit of a chemistry. There's a DNA to different projects, and a really good project can do very, very well without name actors anywhere in the world, and a project that has great actors isn't necessarily going to do well. So that one, I wouldn't really talk about that as an example of anything in particular. It's not very educational, but I think. But what it does show is that there's certain types of things that you could do, I think. If you, for example, have a script that you think is really good, and you could have your A scenario and your B scenario, which is my A scenario is if I get A-list cast, the movie will be made for such and such budget. But if I don't get A-list cast, the movie could be made for smaller budget, and it could still be viable because it's good script and there's a market for it and we believe in it. I mean, that would be maybe a better way to get out of this conundrum that you're in with the Catch-22 and all of that. So, yeah.
On the question of data, are you talking regionally or in developed markets? Regionally. So regionally, the best source of data are the distributors. So, and they're pretty good at, having documented numbers of what the box office was, etc. Now, on the budget side, no, you have to rely on producers, etc. So it's hard to gather, research on many movies. But at least in the sense that it matters, what you really need is the box office more than what those movies cost, because even if they all made or lost money, it's irrelevant to you. What matters to you is how much box office you can generate, and then backtrack into it how much your budget should be. So.
There's a question here.
Hi, I'm Saida Jules, I'm producer, and I would like to ask you a question. If you become part of the project at the development stage, then who makes decision on a star cast and director? Suppose if you get a project that you like, do you go ahead with a proposed cast? You decide whom you can get in a movie, maybe for a more valuable project. Like, how does that part works?
When we get involved at the early stage, it's a collaboration between us and the director normally. And also, we always have partners on our movies in Asia. It's very important, we feel, to have local partners wherever we're operating, particularly if we're making a movie for a market segment that is dominated by another language. Almost all of the movies that we make right now are in Asian languages, so that it's just purely collaborative, and it can't really be any other way, because as a financier, I don't want to dictate something to an unwilling director. But on the other hand, if a director is unrealistic, then the financing may go away.
I think it's worth remembering that film is really a collaborative business, and so don't think you have to do it all by yourself. Find people to do stuff with, and if you don't have a skill set, find somebody who does to partner with.
Hi, this is for Lauren, I think, right? You said you either come in the first or last, and you avoid coming in between. So why would you, if you come in first, why would you come in first? And if you come in last, why would you come in last? And which one would you prefer?
It's a good question. I think that the coming in first part of it is a very simple answer for me, and it's because to me it's an undeniable project. It's something that is such an exciting story. You can't, sleep if you don't grab hold of it, and you know that there's a tremendous opportunity there, and it's usually something where you realize if you don't grab it now, somebody else will, and it'll be gone, and you'll watch someone else go make your television show or your movie. And those are few and far between. I've found very unusual articles and said, I think this would make a really unusual movie, and let's go option it and see what we can do with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The later stage stuff is usually to be completely honest, a lot of the later stage stuff is too big and too important for me to have produced at an early stage in my career, which is really where I'm at. And I leave that up to more seasoned producers to have been able to package bigger projects and come up with a better script and have a bigger director. And I piggyback on top of their ability to do that because one, it's a great learning experience, and two, I trust how they manage the money on a movie. And I've had a long, a good relationship with a production company who's been around a very long time and have partnered with them on a number of their projects for that reason. And those are usually later stage projects where I'm very hands-off in terms of the development and the creative aspect of it. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Questions in the back?
Hi, sorry, my name is Maya. My question, talking of, bigger directors, do you guys, anyone of you, invest in a first-time director or first-time scriptwriter? And if not, why? And if yes, why as well?
For a director, the answer is a personal one. The answer is no, only because I started out in physical production. I used to be an assistant director, and I first AD'd several features and a TV show. And I think that directors, they're the type of personality that either crumbles or thrives under that kind of pressure. There are so many decisions to make, and I think that on film sets, not television necessarily because it's a little more institutionalized, but usually the most inexperienced people on film sets are usually the producer and the director. Everybody else are in unions, they've had to get hours, they've had to get into the DGA, or they've had to get into, all the different, or SAG or whatever, they've had to earn their stripes in order to get where they are. And then so many times you have a first-time director at the helm of all these really experienced people. So it's just a personal preference of mine not to go with a first-time feature director. And you know what? I miss out on opportunities sometimes. But I also, for me, a project has to pass the 2-year test for me. Not only creatively, do I want to be, films take so many emails, phone calls, conversations, so many things. I have to really want to talk about this thing for 2 years, but I also have to want to work with people for 2 years and maybe longer. So that's personally my answer. Somebody might have a different one.
Yeah, we will definitely work with first-time directors and first-time writers, but they have to have the self-awareness to surround themselves with a very, very good team. So, although we have a lot of experience in production, the times that we've tried to work with a first-time director who brings nothing to the table except their willingness to direct the movie and doesn't, for example, already have a producer, seasoned producer on board, or doesn't, for example, have experience with whatever it might be, doing music videos or making television commercials or something. I mean, if they have a body of work, we're definitely interested to look at that. But we'd like to see them come with a producer or with a co-investor who is willing to share the risk with us. With writers, it's easier because if we see a good script, it doesn't matter how many scripts that writer has written before. If it's a good script, it's a good script. And similarly, if there's a great writer who comes with a bad script, we're not going to do it just because the writer is famous or something like that.
Again, we get involved at the end, so it's not very relevant to us, but I would echo what I said earlier. Surround yourself with good people, because if you're a first-time director and you have a good producer or a great actor or have some elements that are strong in the package. It's not just one element.
A tool that I've seen work for first-time feature directors is trailers that directors will cut together and they'll pair them with the screenplay when they're sending it out. It may be 2-3 minutes long at most. the style that seems to work is they will borrow from influences for that particular film. So if like the Coen brothers are, you know, the directors that you're drawing from, or you have certain ones in your mind, you can do it for free basically by taking footage from those things. You set it to music for 2 or 3 minutes, maybe you put in some subtitles, and you end up just borrowing from the production value of those movies, because that's usually how you can achieve a look that makes it look what you want it to look like. And then it instills more confidence in financiers somehow when you have that tool. I've seen it work several times.
Colin?
Hi. It's a question for Julien. I'm intrigued by your network of investors. How many local investors have you managed to gather together? Do they invest together? And how big is the investment pool, do you think, in this region?
It's very big, I can tell you that. It's a question of finding the right investments for them. And that's why it's only been, you know, Hollywood movies or international productions, etc., and not, you know, small regional ones, because they're less attractive for them. That's one. Two, the investments are made through the bank, so they're clients of ours who have portfolios of investments, and one of them happens to be movies. So, and we have thousands of clients. The ones that have actually invested are, I would say, maybe less than 100. But people who have looked at investing are, you know, it's a much bigger number. It's only a question of finding the right and educating people over time. So first time you send it, they might pass, they'll see how it does. Next time they say, okay, you know what, maybe we'll try a little bit. So there's not a shortage of money, it's a shortage of educating people and taking the time to do that, one, and two, having the right thing to propose.
And how close are we to getting like an equity-based fund?
We're far, yeah, unfortunately. So.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Walid Budur. I'm a film director. My question is, if I'm ready to approach you, what's the best way to approach you? Like just send an email, call you, meet you in person?
Sure. So email is always the best.
I'm talking in general. So.
Yeah. I mean, I found that with anyone, when you email something, people will read it. They'll either be interested or they won't. Right? When you call, you might call at the wrong time. You know, someone might be busy, might be traveling. You send an email. Everyone reads their emails. They either, you know, like it and then they'll get back to you, or they don't, and then, you know, it's a waste of time anyway. So, but if you are going to email, you better be prepared and have the right package. So.
But I also think it is good to send an email, but it's not good to attach the script to the email, because that's a little bit, first of all, it's presumptuous, but also it causes, it triggers an IP radar reaction where people then feel like, I don't know how you deal with this, but we feel like we have to send something saying we don't accept unsolicited scripts because, God forbid, you know, your movie gets made, or somebody makes a movie like yours, or we make a movie like yours later on, and then you sue us, etc., which is a very Hollywood way of thinking, and it's not so prevalent in Asia, but we still try to take the precautions.
Yeah, I meant synopsis, description, you know, like a marketing material.
Sorry. No, it's okay. She should go.
Yeah, go ahead.
A question for Ellen. Do you only do movies, invest in movies that are meant for the Asian market, or do you use the Asian market to sort of make like sort of a guaranteed market to invest in movies that could be distributed further, such as like the English market?
So our company, Village Roadshow Entertainment Group, has a Hollywood studio which just makes Hollywood movies, and it's sort of a given that a lot of Hollywood movies that are being greenlit these days are looking to generate revenue, significant revenue streams in the international marketplace, and particularly in Asia. The movies that we're making, we generally do our profit and loss analysis based on whether we will recoup in the market of the language of the movie. So that would be China or Thailand or even Indonesia, you know, where the budgets are much smaller, but they can be supported with a good movie. And if we can recoup most of our investment in the target market, then we're very happy to consider taking the movies out elsewhere. For example, the movies that we've done in China, we have also distributed in Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand, where we have, as I said, the biggest distribution company and the biggest cinema circuits. But we don't look to the distribution in those areas for recoupment. We look at that really for profit.
Hi, my name is Obed. I'm from Namibia, Africa. I'm sure you're very, very busy people, so let me just ask you, what would you prefer, a proof of concept or a script with marketing material?
What do you mean by proof of concept?
Yeah.
A 5-minute taste of what the film would be.
Like a trailer.
Like
a trailer. Like a trailer, but most of the time, it's a new phenomenon in Hollywood in terms of like creating a proof of concept, shooting the thing, especially when it has CGI and it's futuristic.
Like what you were talking about, Laura, like a previs kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what I was describing before is different because that's really a trailer that's based on a screenplay that's already been written and he's reversing it. There was a trend about 4 or 5 years ago where there were directors who were making proof of concepts for very cheap and then they were getting huge studio movies. A lot of those studio movies failed. So people don't really follow, at least in Hollywood, I think that people are currently a little bit shy about the proof of concept thing because I really think it goes back to what I was saying before about first-time feature directors. It's one thing to make something very small or even just completely on your computer. That's happened with directors who have then gotten, movies at Warner Brothers, Universal, and it's just a different beast. And, a film is a process. It is a huge, clunky, unreasonable process. And the product ends up either thriving or suffering for it. So I think that's a long way of just saying I think that script is right now it's the way to go. Maybe the pendulum will swing back in a few years, but right now it's not something that's very popular.
Just to recap, you asked if you should have a script and a package or a proof of concept. Yeah, but it's not either or. You can't do anything without a package and a script and a
have all
so
three.
if you have a proof of concept and you don't have a business plan or a package, there's no point. So anyway, you need that anyway. Now, if you, on top of that, do a proof of concept, maybe it helps, but you can't do without a package, script, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you have we've seen this a lot also, like somebody wants to do an animated film, and they show us 3-minute what they think their animation is going to look like. And it can be very cool, but we have no way of contextualizing what that means in terms of the target market and the target budget. So I think that the script and the marketing plan are definitely more important.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of sort of what we call reverse engineering. You have to pretend you're sitting up here and looking at your script as if you don't know, or your project as if you don't know anything about it, and thinking, do I have all the information possible to make a decision? And if the answer is no, then you need to provide more information.
And to that end, it's really important. A lot of filmmakers, I tell them, when I was an agent anyway, I would say you only get one bite of the apple. If you want to go out wide with the script, if you want to send it to people, it doesn't need to be floating around there for 2 years, because then it feels like, well, why has this project been around for 2 years and it hasn't been made? And there are plenty of really great movies. Dallas Buyers Club took 9 or 10 years to actually make before it was made. So I'm not saying that if it's been around for 2 years, it's bad. It's the perception that nobody else wants it, so why would I want to take it? So whenever you're going to start presenting the project, make sure it's in ship shape, because that's when you want to make your push out to investors and be aggressive about it. It kind of goes back to the truism I was saying before about films don't get made for the budget you drafted, but for what the market will bear. You have to create a market for your film and send it out to as many people as you can in the best shape possible.
One last thing to Ellen's point. When it is an animation, it helps a lot. I mean, we happen to have invested in an animated movie, and there was a short, few-minute trailer. It was The Prophet, Salma Hayek's production, etc. And so we did see something, and it did get us excited. But that's very specific to animation. I wouldn't say it's very relevant.
Julien, you said you come in last. So what do you come in with? Debt financing or private equity, or what's your model like?
It's equity, but it's the last chunk before closing.
Is there a specific criteria or percentage that you?
Not really. It has to be a good package that's ready to shoot, and they're missing the last piece of equity. As simple as that.
More questions? Yeah.
Can I just maybe get some thoughts on crowdsourcing, such as Kickstarter? What do you guys think of that? And maybe across the board, if you can tell us, like I think Ellen mentioned, fish out of water in that region is a complete X. What are the red lights? Assuming that you have a somewhat decent package to work with, what's the X for you?
I found that the most successful crowdsourcing projects, Veronica Mars, Super Troopers 2, I'm probably forgetting a couple, those crowdfunding campaigns, they were actually fueled by a particular PR agency based out of New York, and I'm forgetting what their name is, but I couldn't figure out why Super Troopers 2 that raised all of their financing within 24 hours was able to do it, but I also didn't understand why. I understood why like Perez Hilton was reporting on Super Troopers 2. I couldn't figure out why the Wall Street Journal was reporting on Super Troopers 2. And I ended up finding through a friend the media packet for Super Troopers 2, and that PR agency covered every single news outlet possible, and it drew people to the Indiegogo page where they ended up financing. So I think if you're going to do that, it's probably worth your dollar to get that PR company. And I'll give you my email address after this if you're interested in that, and I will dig up that packet and I'll tell you the name.
I've been given this symbol that it's all over. So I'll just if everyone wants to say a last word, they may. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody, for attending.